All right, we should be live and we should start to see the attendees pop in as I do.
Okay.
So we'll just maybe give it a few seconds here, Gord, for it to load up with the attendees from the public, and then I think you can open it up if that's all right. I'm expecting about 15, I believe, so. And we're ready at 17, 18, great.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending tonight. This is the Main Street Development Review Committee established by Council. Our first item is the call to order. So I respectfully call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature. If anybody is in conflict, I'd ask you to make it known either now or when that particular item comes up on the agenda. Item C is items for review. The review includes the minutes of our meeting of March the 2nd. The meeting minutes have been provided to each member of the committee. Are there any errors or omissions that we are aware of? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Tom, seconded by Kim. All in favor? All opposed? That motion is carried. Tonight, we're going to have presentations for the public of each of our subcommittees. We've got an introduction by planning. We'll deal with that. Traffic, heritage, urban design, a little bit on zoning and landscaping and policy review. So Christina, I'd invite you to start with the public presentation process.
Thank you very much, Gordon. I just want to remind the public, our Q&A session will be at the end of these presentations. So feel free, if you have any questions, you can type them in the Q&A or simply use a raise your hand function and we'll be addressing you in order at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Christina. There we go. I'm sure our members of the public, obviously from attending this, have been aware the Main Street Development Policy Review Committee was established earlier last year with the purpose of reviewing our study corridor that runs from Heritage Road west to the Kratz Side Road and encompasses all properties at the front on the Main Street corridor. There's been a great deal of development in this corridor over the years. And a number of issues have come up which need some further investigation, hence the forming of the committee. Next slide, please. The area highlighted in red is our study area. This encompasses all the various properties along here. It's made up of a number of different uses, residential, commercial, highway commercial, as well as some institutional in there with a couple of churches, as well as the Kingsville High School. Next slide. The committee itself is made up of a total of 4 main subcommittees consisting of traffic, heritage, urban design, zoning, and landscaping and signage. This was established in our initial discussions with the committee and what the areas of most importance were. From the diagram, you can kind of see that there's overlap on all of them, and they come together in the center. There is a 5th subcommittee that's made up of planning staff. We will be taking the information and the recommendations that come out of the committee once presented to council in order to formulate any necessary policies from the actions of the committee. Next slide. There's basically 4 main items that are being undertaken as part of the review process. First and foremost, obviously, review what policies are currently in place, how they help or hinder or create or fragment the study area itself. Next, to explore through the facilitation of open and broad discussion on the vision for the Main Street corridor. Vision is one thing that the committee members were all in agreement with, has been lacking over time along the Main Street corridor. Thirdly, to focus on what is the initial study structure to yield the best results of the development along the Main Street corridor, and that resulted in the formulation of the different subcommittees and the areas that they will specifically look at. And then finally, as a result, to create an interconnected policy or policies that provide the town and its residents with a conveyable vision of the future. What will result from this is the establishment of a plan for the Main Street corridor that will hopefully guide development as we move forward and give some certainty to all of the residents in Kingsville of what they will see in the future as time goes on. That is the end of my introduction.
Thank you, Robert. My name is Tom Greenall, and I'm a member of the Traffic Subcommittee. And along with Laura Mastronardi, Joe Wiles, and our subcommittee chairperson, Mary Ellen Havlick. Next page, please. The areas of this committee's review runs from Heritage Road in the west through downtown to the Kratz Road on the east, thereby connecting County Road 20 to Seacliff Drive. There are many areas of concern, and what we have done is tried to bring them into four main points noted through our meetings. Point number one is traffic congestion, especially during the early mornings and mid to late afternoons as people head to or return from their place of employment. Point number two is for traffic and pedestrian safety. Point three is the lack of a full current traffic study. And we'll bring more of this as we go through this presentation. We've also included active transportation along the entire length of the study area. Page. Next slide, thank you. Summary of our concerns, or main concerns, were traffic congestion. And as you can see, a lot of the congestion we believe is poorly timed traffic lights, especially in the East End. Excessive access and egress points along Main Street, which include private driveways, intersections, and entrances to businesses. Crosswalks, on-street parking, and underutilization of municipal parking lots. And I believe there are 7 within the downtown core. Traffic and pedestrian safety is another area. Speed caused by impatient drivers. Hence, there was a total of 119 accidents reported by the OPP from 2016 to early 2020. Crosswalks, both lighted and unlighted. Poor driving habits, such as the use of the center turn lane as a means to pass other vehicles. Again, excessive access and egress points. And the absence of lane markings. And what we mean by that is that Main Street and Division Road intersection, where drivers tend to pass on the right to make a right-hand turn. Next page. Independent traffic study. We've noticed a lack of an independent historical and current data, allowing us to deem as to what the volume of traffic is. And most of the current data is provided by developers during their initial proposal for developments. And there is no ability to validate their findings. Over-reliance, and again, over-reliance of data submitted by developers. Active transportation, inadequate parking for cyclists. There is no area for cyclists to park their bikes. Our current infrastructure is limiting and is limited to walking, jogging, and running on the current sidewalks. Next page. Our recommendations are following of the 4 main features. Traffic congestion. We would like the retiming of streetlights to allow for better traffic flow. We would like to limit new access points on the study area. We would like to standardize crosswalks to ensure all that are lighted. And what I'm saying about lighted and unlighted is unlighted ones are the ones that are at the post office and across from Osarchino's restaurant. On-street parking. We bounced this one around quite a bit with regard to recommendations, and we cannot come up with a recommendation at this time. Municipal parking lots. Better parking signs and leading to the municipal parking area instead of on-street parking. And we would like the town to accelerate the work plans for the extension of Heritage Road to Road 2, as well as all Road 2 improvements. This will create a bypass around the downtown core. Traffic and pedestrian safety. Introduction of a community safety zone from Spruce Street to Weigel. And this will include the medical building, the old age home, and also the schools at the far end. Again, standardization of crosswalks as above, and we would encourage lighted crosswalks. Poor education is an education and enforcement. We would like to see the OPP enforcing more downtown in this area and making people and through education and through enforcement. Reduce access and egress points for pedestrian safety. The more access and egress points is going to cause problems. And improved road markings, especially for turning lanes. The independent traffic study, we wish it to be inundated and funded by the town in order to provide a complete baseline for future developments, and also in conjunction with the master transportation plan. Active transportation, development of a multi-use pathway. The town of Kingsville bylaw prohibits bicycles with a wheel diameter of 60 centimeters from using sidewalks, thus forcing bike riders to add to traffic congestion or to ride along the sidewalks. And I'm sure we've all had that problem. The introduction of bike racks in municipal parking lots, providing proper parking for cyclists to lock their bikes up, and improve road markings for cyclists to allow for a area for cyclists to travel in. For people that are interested, we recommend you to read our full review, which will be found on the following website at kingsville.ca and under the Main Street traffic subcommittees. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Sekeli. I headed the Heritage Subcommittee of the Main Street Development Review Committee. Our committee was comprised of myself, Gideon Spivak, and Joel Wilds. Now, as we were coming up with recommendations to protect heritage and to enhance heritage on Main Street, we came up with 23 recommendations. And they basically, Christine, I'm on the next slide. Basically, they fell under 5 main areas, focus areas, and those were protecting properties that are designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. And there are currently 8 properties on Main Street in the study area that have heritage designation under the Act. The second focus area was protecting properties on the Kingsville Municipal Heritage Register that are key elements of the downtown landscape, streetscape. So there are 38 properties on Main Street that are on the register. Of those 38, 8 of them are designated. So there's a bit of a distinction there. So then we are looking for protecting other properties that are on the Kingsville Municipal Heritage Register, and then enhancing Main Street's heritage feel. Next slide, please.
Sarah, actually, you're not as loud as Thomas, so I'm not sure which microphone you're using. If it's on your earpiece, maybe try speaking into it.
Oh.
I'm not sure. Now I don't hear it at all. I'm not getting anything. Sorry.
Use my earpiece at all. Is that better?
Oh, very loud and clear. All right. We'll continue this way if that's all right.
Shall I go back? Shall I go back?
No, we heard you. It just wasn't as loud as normal.
Okay.
I'll move to the next slide now.
Thank you. So we looked at a number of sources, both in the town of Kingsville, some heritage and local history sources, as well as some resources from other municipalities and from the province, the Ontario Heritage Toolkit and the Ontario Heritage Trust website. Next slide, please. So our main findings, as I said, we have 23 recommendations, and those can be found in the committee's full 24-page report. But they fall basically under these main headings. So the first recommendation is the town of Kingsville should protect more of the key historic buildings on and near Main Street with designation under the Ontario Heritage Act. These include the Conklin Building, which is on the south side of Main Street, close to Division. And then the buildings that flow along there. So the Fox Block, the David Block, the David Store. Then moving west, the Union Block, 29 Main Street West is already designated, but we would like to see designation of 31 and 33 Main Street West, which are buildings that are attached to that building. It's a 3-unit building. Also, the DeJean Block, where the Main is located, the Main restaurant, the Main Bar and Grill. And the Jasperson Block, which abuts a building on Main Street. It's at 14 Division Street South. So these are all buildings that are key historic buildings downtown. Another of our main findings is that designated properties on Main Street should be protected with controls on development on abutting lots. And what do we mean by controls? We mean that we would like the town to be careful with any zoning changes on the abutting properties, that they be careful with any variances that are sought and any relief that's being sought from bylaws. Next slide. So the town of Kingsville should encourage property owners to repurpose heritage buildings on Main Street. The worst thing for a heritage building is for it to sit vacant. That's true of any building. A vacant building is not desirable, especially on Main Street in your main commercial core. So we would like to see some adaptive reuse of heritage buildings. And we've got a couple of examples here in the photographs. One is the old fire hall, one is a former home that was turned into a restaurant. Next slide, please. So to enhance Main Street's heritage feel, we think the town of Kingsville should implement bylaw controls, such as limiting building heights, encouraging the placement of new buildings at the sidewalk to create a street wall, and prohibiting the installation of internally lit signs. Also, that the town of Kingsville should implement programs beyond designation to preserve historic facades. So some of the things we'd like the town to look at doing is finding ways to discourage the cladding of original brick facades, and to implement a bylaw that regulates the type and size of signs that are allowed on buildings. And then finally, the next main heading of recommendations we have is that to enhance the downtown core's heritage feel, the town of Kingsville should use only Victorian or Edwardian inspired fixtures on public rights of way and install crosswalks that mimic the kind of brick that was produced in Kingsville during those eras.
Okay. Hi, I'm Brenda Gagne, and I am part of this committee and also part of the subcommittee called Urban Design Group. There's myself, Dave Hunt, Tasha Slater, and Sarah Kelly on that group. We've worked diligently for you and hope you enjoy the presentation and the ideas we've come up with. We have a very eclectic assortment of small businesses, services, and natural sites, rich in historic character, and our eyes steadily set on the future as one of the most desirable places to live in Canada. We need to brand our town with a consistent implementation of design, access, and excellent livability for our residents. Streets should be functional, attractive, and have a definable sense of identity. We would like to preserve the historic buildings, as been previously said by Sarah, and the ability to walk, cycle, drive, sit, and enjoy the shops and amenities are very important. We want to look at the creativity and innovation Appropriately designed buildings, pedestrian focused places, inviting streetscapes would be lovely for our main street. Main Street is to reflect the values of the community and speaks to the economic, social, and cultural fabric of our community. We've come up with several subheadings here. One is the public realm. Public realm is walking, cycling, and driving. We would like to see pedestrian-oriented spaces and routes, well-defined barrier-free areas, and strategic shelters and wayfinding throughout. For our streetscape, we would like to see outdoor patios, retail displays, canopies, awnings, and umbrellas. Pedestrian path zones. We would like to see safe sidewalks, identified crosswalks, barrier-free and varied road surfaces. For the plantings and furnishings, we would like to see native non-invasive trees, floral planting beds, street benches, lanterns, lighting, and bicycle stands. For our curb zone elements, we would like to see underground or hidden utilities and curb ramps. Next slide. We've taken some pictures, we've researched around Ontario and seen some beautiful archways that towns have put in their towns that we think would be really great for our town. We would like to see these archways at Main Street and Heritage on the west side and Main Street and Kratz on the east. Next slide. For our green space within the core of the city and the public gatherings, for social interactions, people visiting, people resting, people enjoying the view, we'd like to see provide trees, decorative paving, and lighting and some seating in this area. Next slide. Sculptures and murals are used in many towns. You can see them in Leamington. They have beautiful monarch butterflies on the side of one of their buildings. And Essex, you can see the picture below there to the right. That's actually from the town of Essex. And they've done quite a few murals there where they're bringing in their history and heritage. I particularly like the geese on the one side because that's what Kingsville is, and it'd be lovely to see something like that on some of our walls. It'd be nice to have the owners of the buildings approach to see if they're interested in doing this and helping fund it, as well as the Art Society. Students could contribute to the artwork on the buildings, and residents could also sponsor for this. Next slide. We'd like to see more signs identifying pathways, roadways, businesses, areas of interest, and particularly parking lots. We do have 7 parking lots, and I really personally can't tell you where all of them are. So the signage is lacking there. We'd like to see some sort of signage, wayfinding as we call it, for directing people to certain areas of interest, stores, features, historical areas in the town. Next slide. We have low-rise residential buildings and low-rise non-residential buildings. For the low-rise residential, we'd like to see them being compatible with entrances, vehicle parking, and materials all being very consistent for one another. For the low-rise non-residential, we would like to see 6 meters in height maximum from Green Hill Lane to Jasperson, 10 meters in height for the maximum of all other areas of Main Street and County Road 20. We would not like to see big box stores in the town. We feel that they are close enough in other cities and towns that we don't need them in this area. It also brings a lot of traffic with it as well. Strip malls, we'd like to be very careful with how the strip malls look and the multi-unit developments. It'd be nice to have the facade of an older look on these buildings. And for vacant buildings as well, we'd like to see that if they are closed for more than 30 days, that the owner of the building perhaps put up some signage on those windows instead of just newsprint or brown paper, and do maps of the city or the town and things that you can see. Surface parking areas, we would like those areas to be shielded from the road and lit and have proper signage, as I've said before, for those locations. For service loading and storage areas, we have a lot of trucks coming down delivering to the different shops there. We'd like to have that not visible from the roadway if possible, that we could have them go around the rear or the sides of it and just clean up the traffic area for that, the trucks that would stop in the area that could cause problems with our traffic. Next slide. Here's some ideas of facades in different towns. And you can see it really brings out the cultural and the historical nature of the towns. It brings it very cognizant, very together. And that's what we'd like to see. We don't really want to see modern buildings in the middle of something that has old on either side of it. So we'd like to see the structure done for the facades, that it brings it into tune with the town of what it looks like with the history. Next slide. Our full report is available online, and we would encourage you to look at that. It's some 24 pages long. A lot of work has gone into it, and I hope you appreciate it. And hopefully you can bring some more ideas for us that we haven't thought of, or different points of view, and we encourage that. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Good evening. My name is Heather Brown, and I'm part of the Zoning, Landscaping, Streetscape, and Signage Subcommittee, along with Dennis Rogers and Bruce George. We started, next slide, please. We started by focusing on areas within the town and areas of concern. We would like to see the town ensure properties follow approved zoning as per business status that the properties withstand in. We suggest any new builds and current properties with the ability to have green space have the opportunity to hear that and get support from the town of Kingsville. We ask that the town develops a bylaw for streetscape, property standards, and signage, where specifics could be laid out to help new businesses that are located already within the town of Kingsville, to have a common flow. You've heard a commonality with everybody that's presented, that we want a real heritage feeling to keep with what I think Kingsville is. And lastly, we recommend that each business only have the specific signage that resides to that business, just to limit confusion and to keep it neat, straight lines and clean. Next slide, please. To help us find our data, we started by developing our focus areas. We developed this spreadsheet that included a signage, heritage status, zoning, and the MPAC. These helped us kind of strategically pick the pieces that we thought were most important. Again, we really do think that there's lots of opportunity for voices to be heard. So we do hope tonight you can share some of your thoughts with us. And in an informal package, you can see the data process there. I'll turn it over to Dennis.
Thanks, Heather. So summary of our main findings. So review to be done of the current property usage and compared to the zoning regulations. So essentially see per the spreadsheet that we said, which buildings, how they're being zoned versus how they're being used currently. Bylaw needs to be developed for green space, for developed properties. Just one thing we feel, just more green space, the better. You look around for any small town feel. You know, my personal opinion aside, greener the better. Address ideas regarding houses and businesses that do not have a main entrance facing the street their address is on. So essentially, just to give you the feel on the street, I know there's been a couple buildings that are not facing Main Street, so it's just our recommendation that anything new or any construction or what have you doesn't have to be a main entrance, but it does have a door facing the street. Appearance of the business standards. which will tie into the bylaw to be developed for signage. When we say signage, that's your signage for your building. So the sign that's on your building, maybe it within the windows, part of your building, the size, square footage. We also have some recommendations within the package that we sent of another bylaw for signage. Another thing we found was multiple signage on properties or advertising on buildings for businesses that are not associated with the address. Again, just to kind of echo what Heather said, is we kind of find it a little bit confusing. We find it takes away from the natural landscape of the downtown for that business. Next slide, please. Recommendations. So properties to be evaluated to ensure they are following the zoning bylaws as we had previously discussed. Town of Kingsville developed this green space bylaw. Houses or buildings facing the front door to the street that their address is on. So finding which ones are currently doing it, find out why, and then obviously implement something for moving forward. Bylaws, again, for our signage and property standards. And the Town of Kingsville set a signage bylaw to support no billboard or advertising or consisting of business clarification. We're going to use these recommendations as standard for the Town of Kingsville as a whole and not just Main Street. So again, our recommendation is that extend beyond the lines that were set out a little bit earlier, and then this would be encompassed within all of Kingsville. Just some references. That sign bylaw that we had talked about was for Niagara on the Lake. Some more signage that we found from Prince Edward County, and then also within that packet, some examples of green space, signage for businesses, open and closed signs, so on and so forth.
Thank you, everyone. Good job. I'm going to just wrap it up here. The last piece of this, as I mentioned from the beginning, is it's certainly not the only piece, but it certainly will play a significant role moving forward, is policy development. Right now, the two governing documents for all of Kingsville are the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment. From reviewing those existing policies, it becomes quite evident that the official plan does not deal specifically with the Main Street corridor or the study area, and the zoning bylaw does not deal specifically. They're dealt with on a property by property or area by area basis in the document. They don't speak to a lot of the items that have been raised through discussions by the committee and some of the recommendations that have been raised. What planning policy would happen, could potentially happen along the corridor would be the development of a master plan, or as I mentioned at the beginning, kind of a vision for the Main Street corridor that would incorporate a number of the items that have been presented here tonight, if they're approved by council. Next slide. What we see right now, and this is certainly just the beginning stages of the policy development, is that development of new planning policies would be based on a combination of committee's recommendations, again, as they're adopted by council, public input through both this and there will be a couple of other opportunities moving forward for additional public input, and certainly people are welcome to email myself or the town planner at any time to provide additional comment that we pass along to the committee. And review in relation to the applicable, our existing local policies. Any changes to the official plan obviously have to be brought to the county for final approval. And we also have to keep in mind provincial policy statement. Like it or not, it's still the governing document. Possible outcomes that could be developed from a planning standpoint would be the establishment of a special policy area for the Main Street corridor that's been the subject of the review, with very specific policies that can incorporate a number of the items discussed tonight. Establish of a downtown community improvement plan for the Main Street core area. In 2017, council supported the establishment of the community improvement plan for the downtown Cottam area. It's taken a little time for that to kick in, but at that time that was felt the area of focus, and there has been some uptake on that program. Community improvement plans can be used for a great many things in order to help support the downtown area, as well as implement programs to help implement a number of the programs that are ideas that have been presented here tonight. And then reworking of current policy to focus more specifically on a Main Street corridor, rather than relying necessarily on just the general guidelines that are in the official plan itself and the zoning. And that concludes the overall presentation, and we will move into the question and answer. As was mentioned at the beginning, there's a raise your hand function on the Zoom that you can use. There's also the ability to type questions in, and we will do our best as they come up to get you the answer.
I'd invite Christina to solicit the public input and basically for the public so that they are aware this presentation has not gone to council. Kim DeYoung actually brought the idea of having this committee established by council. So what we're trying to do is get the public input so the committee can adjust it, how should I say, make a presentation to council and get feedback from the council and the staff as well. So Christina, I invite you to get the public for her questions and answers.
Very good. Thank you, Gord. I don't see anyone with their hands raised at this time. Anyone in the public, if you would like to speak, please just raise your hand and then I'll allow you to speak. Or once again, you're more than welcome to type your question in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Okay, I see Helen Knowles. I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to ask your question.
Oh, hi there, Helen Knowles. I applaud the work that this committee has done. It's so refreshing to see some vision and steps forward for a strategy for what we want the town of Kingsville to look like. I would just ask the question, if we could not stretch the mandate of this group to include Division Street. Clearly, Main Street is the east-west corridor for town, but Division Street is also a corridor and a main artery for people who come to town. So I know it's not your mandate, but I just would ask that that be considered in the future moving forward. Thank you.
Did anybody want to comment on that or just move on to the next question? Go ahead, Kim.
Thanks, Helen. I think it's been brought up a few times in this committee that some of these policies would best extend at least a block up and a block down, at least into the commercial district in the general area. The terms of reference specifically do limit it to Main Street, but that's for this committee. Once it goes to council, of course, council can take it further if they want. So it's certainly a comment that I think both this committee has made, and I'm not surprised to hear it be made from the public as well.
Thank you. I'll just go ahead and move on to the next question here from Anne Lemire. Anne, go ahead if you'd like to go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, I just want to know, I think it's wonderful, all the really hard work and how detailed the whole report is. And I look forward to reading on the additional notes that are for each area. My question is, I would like to know how long is this going to take before it is brought to council? And also I have a question regarding, initially there was a question of an interim bylaw that was going to be introduced to put a moratorium on development in the Main Street corridor. And I just want to know if that's going to be going to council with these proposals, and how long will that take before we have some decisions from council?
Thanks for the question. From a timing standpoint, there's about two next steps moving forward. One will be for the committee to to take the comment back from the public that we hear tonight and review their recommendations. If they feel that there's any updates or that they want to make, and then that final presentation be brought forward to council. I don't want to give a specific date, likely probably in May. Once that's presented to council, it'll depend on council's actions at that meeting when it comes back to council for final consideration. Speculating possibly June. The interim control bylaw aspect of that was raised back in February of 2020. That has been a topic of discussion by the committee. Nothing is off the table at this point, but it's not something that's necessarily planned to come forward immediately. I would just simply say, keep an eye on the ongoing council meetings moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I was happy to see all the work that was particularly done on the traffic and on the heritage. I think that focusing on that in our town will help draw a lot of tourism to town and accentuate all the good things about our town. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Anne. I do have 2 questions in the Q&A, so I'll just read them out and allow the committee to answer. It says from Anonymous, is there room for road markings for cyclists on Main Street, both east and west? I currently use sidewalks as much as possible as it does not feel safe on the road from Heritage to Kratz.
That will have to be something that will be looked at by infrastructure and engineering services in terms of the logistics of being able to add those, safely add them, I would say in certain areas, but that certainly I think is something that the committee has raised in terms of adding into the Main Street corridor. But basically I would say right now from just general observation traveling on Main Street, no, not to safely add, but it is certainly something that could be factored into the life cycle of Main Street when it needs to be updated, whether something like that could be incorporated.
All right, I'll go ahead to the next question here. Is there any thought of reducing street parking and widening sidewalks?
I think this all ties in with when we started the committee, our CEO noted we're not going to have every member of the senior management team from engineering and everybody else on the committee. So we're going with a core issue right now. And our CEO, Mr. Norton, has asked that their report go to council in a draft format to start with and give people, for example, Andrew Planky and Sean Martino and the other staff in the town an opportunity to review any of the suggestions we get tonight before the final report, because we have not had their expertise on this committee. Robert and Christina have been helping us with the planning stuff, but we have people with different backgrounds, but we don't have all the engineering staff on that committee. So it's a work in progress.
I have no other questions at this time, either typed in the Q&A or anyone's hands raised. I believe this would probably be a good opportunity if anyone has any other comments for the committee or recommendations on the presentations that you've seen before you today.
Tasha had her hand up and then Kim.
Yes, thanks so much, Gord. I just wanted to make a note about what you'd said, Gord, and the last question about the widening of the sidewalks and the parking. And we as a committee have looked very long and hard at parking in our town and keeping the charm and keeping the free parking as an option. So that, obviously we'll have to look at much further as we get going into this whole process, but it's definitely has been a considerations committee.
Thank you. Kim?
I just guess as a comment, the public should know that they can continue to add their thoughts and their comments or questions through, I'm assuming to you, Robert, R. Brown at kingsville.ca. The presentations and the reports are all available on the town's website. I've linked them and the town has linked them as well. And there's so much to go through that I hope that the people who actually really are interested in this, that they take the time to go through it and give specific comments, because you know, this is going to be something that administration has to look at, and some of it's going to get changed, some of it will stay the same. And the more the public is engaged at this point in the process, the more the end product will look at what something that the community actually wants. So just because you maybe didn't get your question in now, because you didn't have a chance to look over everything, please send in thoughts and comments and questions to Robert, and they'll either get back to this committee, hopefully, or through to council one way or another to get addressed and considered. And thank you, everybody who did show up tonight.
I do have an additional question here, Gord. So I'm going to go ahead and just read it out. It's been typed in the Q&A. There seems to be a theme of increased regulation throughout tonight's presentation. Could that be seen as discouraging to businesses and property owners?
I don't think the intent is to be discouraging. The intent is to make sure that people know what the expectations are. I would suggest that our Business Improvement Association, we have members on our committee that are also on the BIA who want to encourage businesses within the community, and the town is working on that as well. So we're not trying to make it more difficult, but if someone comes to town, we're trying to make sure that they know what the general expectations are. And at this stage, it's all draft and council has made a comment. Any other committee members wish to comment on that? Dave, you're on the other committee, and Tasha. Tasha?
Yeah, essentially, it's providing a framework for future development in order to be uniform and seek a finalized direction for this corridor, rather than it having absolutely no regulation and having no uniformity. This will form the framework for future developments.
Great, thanks, Dave. Tasha, then Dennis.
Yeah, I do understand where people might see this as being limiting, but I think that's exactly what we are not wanting to do. What we're wanting to do is give a clear direction and create a brand for our town. We do have a very eclectic offering already in our community. We want to continue with that eclectic offering, but we want to be able to make sure that we don't have inconsistencies of development that, you know, create this question mark about what the identity of our town really is. So I think that the regulation is really putting in place just a banded vision, and we're not looking at something completely homogeneous. That's not the intent here. The intent is to keep our eclectic offering for a community, but do it within the confines of expectations that are, as Dave says, you know, to be expected. It's something to lean back on, to know what the kind of our baselines are.
Thank you. Dennis?
Thank you. I can tell you just on the personal business side, like I own a business in the downtown core, and these recommendations are something that I look at is going to help bring more people to the downtown core with ease and drive more people to my business. So to answer that question, a lot of these recommendations are going to increase the amount of people that are come to my business. So I can just tell you from my perspective, I agree with it.
Okay, thank you all. Christina, did you have anything else?
I have no other questions typed in, nor do I have any other hands raised at this time.
Committee members, any other comments? New business is the next item on the agenda after we did this repeat of the feedback from the public. Are there any new business items that we should address tonight, Mr. Brown, that we're not aware of?
No, I think we've already addressed that. So there are no new business items unless committee members have anything that they want to raise for tonight or our next meeting.
Okay. Our next meeting is scheduled for May the 4th on Zoom at 7 o'clock. No other business? And I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Dennis, seconded by half a dozen. We'll take Sarah. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you all for attending. Good night.
Good night, Gord.
Good night.